Suppose a 6-person software team wants to sell an AI research workflow to multiple companies. Each company needs its own workspace, its own documents, its own model credentials, and a clear approval step before an agent sends anything outside the system. The finished product is a multi-tenant AI workflow SaaS. A customer signs in, creates a workspace, chooses a workflow, uploads material, and starts a run. The interface shows progress as the agent works. When the agent needs permission to continue, the user gets a clear approval control. The final result is saved inside the correct workspace, and an automation can deliver it to an approved destination. This is one product, not 6 disconnected demos. The UI repository from shadcn provides open code interface components that the team can customize for the dashboard, forms, tables, dialogues, and navigation. It does not provide authentication or business logic. Those responsibilities belong to the application. Payload is the application framework and backend. In a Next.js project, Payload can live in the same app and provide the admin surface, database-backed collections, authentication capabilities, and extensible server logic. The team defines collections for workspaces, memberships, workflow definitions, runs, approvals, and usage records. LangChain runs in a separate worker service and owns model-facing logic. It gives the team a standard way to connect models, retrievers, tools, and structured outputs. CopilotKit owns the agent-facing interaction inside the product. Its shared state, generative interface, and human-in-the-loop patterns let the browser show what the agent is doing without turning the UI into a collection of polling hacks. The AGUI protocol is the bridge between the agent runtime and the client experience. An agent handles business automation around the core run. It can receive a webhook after a run is approved, transform data, and connect the result to one of its supported integrations. It is source available and self-hostable, but its sustainable use license is not the same as a permissive open source license. That distinction must be reviewed before this becomes a commercial product. Coolify is the deployment control plane. It manages applications and databases on servers the team controls through SSH. It does not replace application architecture, a queue, or observability, but it makes the services and their environment configuration easier to operate. Now follow one request through the complete data flow. The browser sends a create run request to an endpoint owned by our Payload application. That endpoint is our API contract. It is not a native endpoint invented for LangChain or NNAN. The request contains a workspace identifier, a workflow identifier, and the user input. Payload authenticates the session, checks that the user belongs to that workspace, validates the workflow, and creates a run record with a queued status. The server returns the run identifier immediately, so a slow model call never blocks the browser request. A worker claims that run and loads only the records scoped to its workspace. The worker builds a LangChain pipeline from code that the team controls. The first version should be deliberately small. One model, one retrieval source, one structured response schema, and one optional tool. LangChain invokes the selected model and validates the output against that schema. As the worker produces progress events, CopilotKit carries agent state to the interface. The shadcn components render that state as a timeline, evidence table, approval dialog, and final result. CopilotKit is not the database. Payload remains the source of truth for run status, approvals, and durable output. If the workflow requests an external action, the worker does not call it immediately. It creates an approval record in Payload and changes the run to waiting for approval. CopilotKit exposes that state in the product. When an authorized user approves, our application records who approved, when they approved, and what exact action was authorized. Only then does the application call a protected NNAN webhook. The webhook payload contains the run identifier and then the minimum data required for the automation. NNAN can then route the approved result to email, a CRM, a ticket system, or another supported integration. It reports success or failure back to an endpoint owned by our application, and Payload closes the run. The service boundaries are simple enough to test. The web service contains Next.js Payload and the customized shadcn interface. The agent worker contains LangChain and the product-specific tools. CopilotKit connects the worker state to the browser. An LangChain is an independent automation service. PostgreSQL stores payload data, while model files or large uploads belong in object storage. Those supporting services are real infrastructure costs, even though they are not part of the 6 featured GitHub repositories. Build the minimum viable product as one vertical slice. First, create the payload collections and write access rules that always filter by workspace identifier. Add tests proving that a member of one workspace cannot read, update, or approve another workspace's records. Then build one dashboard page from shadcn components. It should create a run and display its current state. Do not build a drag-and-drop workflow editor yet. A reliable fixed workflow is more valuable than a visual editor that hides broken boundaries. Next, add the LangChain worker. Define one input schema and one output schema. Then test the chain with a fake model response before spending any model tokens. Store each transition in the run history so a failed job can be diagnosed. Add CopilotKit only after the server-side state machine works. Connect the UI to progress and approval state, and test what happens when the browser disconnects and reconnects. The durable state must come back from Payload rather than depending on an open browser connection. Then add one LangChain workflow behind an authenticated webhook. Start with a low-risk action, such as posting an approved summary to a private test channel. Give the webhook its own secret, validate the run identifier, and make the operation idempotent. If the same event arrives twice, the destination should still receive one result. Record the N8 execution identifier in Payload so operators can trace the automation without pretending that N8 and Payload share one database. For deployment, package the web service and worker as separate container images. Deploy them PostgreSQL and N8 through Coolify on servers you control. Use Coolify for environment variables and service deployment, but keep secrets out of the client bundle and out of the repository. Pin-tested dependency versions, back up the database and object storage, and test a restore before accepting customers. Scaling starts with separate worker concurrency, not with a vague promise of automatic scaling. Production quality depends on tenant isolation and failure handling. Every application query must be scoped to a workspace, and every background job must carry that workspace context. Encrypt traffic, use short-lived sessions where practical, rotate webhook and model credentials, and keep an audit trail for approvals. Treat uploaded content as untrusted input. Restrict agent tools to an allow list. Cap file size and runtime, and never let model output become an executable command without validation and explicit permission. Retries need boundaries. A transient model timeout can retray with exponential backoff, but an invalid schema should fail and ask for review. An LangChain delivery can retry with an idempotency key. A provider fallback should be configured by the product team and recorded in the run history, not selected silently. Track run latency, failure rate, approval time, model usage, and delivery failures. Coolify can operate the services, but the application still needs structured logs, health checks, alerts, and tested recovery procedures. The cost model is honest. The repositories reduce licensing and development work, but they do not make the service free. The team still pays for servers, storage backups, network traffic model inference, and operational time. CopilotKit, Payload, LangChain, shadcn UI, and Coolify each have their own current license terms, while LangChain requires special attention because of its Faircode license. Check every license at the version you ship and confirm that your commercial use is allowed. The right first milestone is not a giant AI platform. It is one customer workflow that moves safely from authenticated input, through a LangChain run, into a CopilotKit approval, through one LangChain automation, and back into a durable payload record, all deployed with Coolify. Once that path is observable and secure, add the next workflow. Which business process would you choose for that first vertical slice?